Should you go? Should you go to university? An economic analysis. So I'm going to be using some data. I'm going to be using some models that will simply make it easier for you to understand whether you should go or not. Okay, so let's get into it. So I was sent this interesting graphic by a friend of mine, and it's quite scary, actually. I think it's quite scary. So it shows the rise in average college costs and the fact that average earnings have hardly risen. They've grown at a pace. And so in the middle, we have this gray area, which is basically money that is burnt by students who pay so much for their tuition, but then it's the amount lost because they don't make it back with their earnings. And there are many reasons for this. It's pretty frightening if you look at just the sheer size of the difference. I've labeled it delta Y. So you really got to think quite carefully, especially as the economy deteriorates. Do you want to be in this zone? Do you want to be basically just losing money? So we're going to go into the three reasons why this is happening. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the rising demand for college, which is leading to the increase in college costs. We'll be looking at the rising supply of graduates that is pushing down average earnings. And we're going to be also challenging the commonly held assumption that higher education does benefits to society as a whole. And we're going to be saying, well, do those benefits still exist? And if not, what is the case now? Hint, a lot of things have changed. So yeah, let's get into it. So number one is rising demand for college. Okay, pretty simple here. Anyone with a basic level of understanding of the world knows that as demand increases, price increases. Why is this? Number one is actually demographics. So there is actually a bulge right now in the population of the Western world in the 60s, because if you think about it, in the 40s and the decades previous, there was not really much birth happening because all the men were at war or dying. So there was this big boom of there's a big baby boom in the 60s, which has led to a lot of adults, and therefore those adults are now produce us. So there's a big bulge in the population of 16 to 18-year-olds, hence more people who are at the age who can enter university. So simple population rise increases demand. We have very generous student loan aid in the UK and in the US. Yeah, but they're forgetting student debt. And so obviously this opens up education to a lot of people who probably otherwise couldn't afford it. Colleges get funded loads of money by the government because the government basically see it as a pipeline to push workers into the economy. And so they receive a lot of funding, and so there's a lot of competition between these colleges. So you'll see on your phone, if you actually pay attention to this sort of stuff, you'll be seeing you'll be seeing ads from universities in your area, universities across the world. And so they have a strong advertising campaign, which again attracts demand. But the biggest factor of them all is by far social stigma. The reason for this social stigma is quite interesting. It's actually because your parents who push this, right? When they were kids, getting into university was actually quite a rare thing. In the 80s, it was quite an achievement to get into university because there weren't that many. They were pretty expensive, and they were very, very hard to get into. But however, the situation has changed massively now. It's pretty easy to get into a university, study a course, but they don't realize that scarcity that they had is still a thing. So there's still a lot of prestige that comes with universities. So this will probably take a couple of generations to get rid of. But by far, this is the biggest reason why people go to university, and it's the worst reason you should go to university. Because guess what? It's your life you're controlling. So you have to think, is it worth it for me? And it is in certain cases, and I'm going to go into it. Okay, so now we're going to look at the rise in supply that's causing the falling return on college education. So obviously, increasing supply lowers the price, and so that's why we're seeing a lowering of earnings, aka employers have so many graduates, they have so much to choose from, that the bargaining power is now with the employers, so they can charge a lower price, which means that the wage premium, aka the difference between a graduate and a non-graduate, is shrinking with time. Because again, it's a toxic mix of increasing demand that's pushing up the price of colleges, but then as a result of more people getting pushed into college, there's a bigger supply of graduates, which is driving down earnings. And so as this cycle gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, the gap between between how much you pay for college and how much you earn gets larger and larger and larger, as shown by that grey zone. So now we're going to look at, does education still have positive externalities? Does it still provide a net benefit to society? So for you, here are some of the traditional reasons that your teachers will tell you about why it does benefit society. Learning higher order skills, more complex skills, you can solve more complex problems, which increases your capability in the economy, which increases the productivity and therefore growth. And obviously growth means higher incomes for all and higher standard of living to everyone. Okay, so it's like a ripple effect of you going to education. Another benefit is improved civil discourse. Now, this is something I do agree with. Civil discourse, by the way, is just how logically can we debate political issues or issues that affect society. A great example of this would be the Brexit vote. So, in the case of the Brexit vote, I would definitely say a lack of education in economics and the economic fallouts that would happen as a result of Brexit led to there being a pretty poor quality of civic discourse, which has, led us to the position we're in right now in terms of trade with the world. So if you have more educated people, they understand topics better and they can discuss things with more clarity. And so that's better, better decisions for democracy. Creative innovation and investment in R&D happens from education as well. It happens from universities. Prime example of this is the AstraZeneca vaccine. So developed by Oxford. So we have really, really smart academicians and PhD students in the medical field in Oxford as a result of universities. And so these guys developed the vaccine that saved so many lives. And so that is absolutely a net positive to the world of education, of investing into universities. Think of the number of lives the AstraZeneca vaccine has saved. Occupational mobility, pretty simple point. It's basically if you have higher order skills, you can move into any job you want. So you're not whole. Imagine it's the 60s or the 70s. You're a miner. All your life, you've received no form of formal education. You've just learned how to be a miner or a factory worker. What happens when Thatcher comes in, bans all the unions, and basically destroys the entire industry, and you don't have the skills to move into finance and software, which is where the new jobs are being created? You're pretty screwed. And so we have a big proportion of what's called structural unemployment. So people who can't move into higher skilled jobs because they don't have the education. Now, if you in schools and universities, a lot more students get to use innovative technologies. So instead of there just being one invention that some guy has in a room, now that's accessible to all kids in schools. For example, you probably got to use a computer from a very young age at primary school. That's an example of technological diffusion. You got to learn how to use this technology because you were taught it in the education system. But the labor market is changing. So how is the labor market changing affecting you as a graduate or as a student? Number one, AI is making skills obsolete. So I'm sure you've played around with ChatGPT and you can see the power of it. If you want to become a blog writer or you graduate with a history degree, an ASTIC literature degree, some sort of administrative role, you're basically going to be, the AI will most likely take your jobs, or at least people who know how to use AI will take your jobs. Okay, so you have to really be skilled in software, in learning how to use the AI. Otherwise, a lot of these traditional subjects are simply, they're going to be obsolete. When you're thinking of going to university, you have to really think, okay, what skill can I learn that is going to bulletproof me against the inevitable onset of AI? Because if you think about it, right, you're being employed by businessmen, right? And businessmen want to make profits. If it turns out that you take 2 days to write a report and you charge, £80 for that for those 2 days with your hourly rate, and AI can do it in 30 seconds for free, who do you think they're going to use? It's quicker and faster than you. AI is quicker and faster than you and smarter than you. So what skills can you learn that allows you to harness AI to elevate your status in the labor market? Yep, number two. This is kind of related to the first point, but skills mismatch. So a lot of people are graduating with liberal arts degrees, humanities, all this sort of crap. Where we need engineers, we need technologists, we need science people, we need physicists to build the world and to manufacture things. And so the reality is of the modern labor market is that you, because of this expansion of HE, this expansion of courses, a lot of people are graduating with useless skills that aren't needed. So that's not just a downside for you, because you graduate psychology, have a great time at university, but you can't find a job. And it also worsens society because society is being taxed, and that's going into your education, and you're not even improving the productivity of the country. So it's a lose lose for both the private individual and society. Pretty tough. You've got to think, right, is it worth me onboarding all this debt for a skill that's not even going to let me pay it back? So again, you have to think really, really carefully about that. But really do consider whether doing your literature degree is worth like 40K of student debt. Number 5, really, really important one. This, especially in the UK, we have, I can say this from just personal experience in Imperial, where I'm studying. There's often a stigma in higher education and universities about commercializing things. We're all about science and improving the world or making money. That's a very vacuous thing to be concerned about. When the reality is that you can only really roll something out and reap the true benefits to society if it does make money. If it's not profitable, you can't produce the product, and so no one receives it. But people in education seem to have a stigma against this again. So, and that's resulted in a lack of basic research being converted into commercial applications. So people come up with inventions, but then they're dissuaded from or have an aversion against making that into a business and actually helping more people with a solution. Okay, so what does this mean for you? I've gone into a lot of depth as to the reality of going to university, but what should you do about it? Number 1, unquestionable. It is only worth going to university from a financial standpoint to study STEM. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, these skills will always be valued, especially at a high level. In debt, study STEM. If you want to do something else, be completely cognizant of the fact that you are going to lose a lot of money. You're going to be broke for a long time. But if it's worth it for you in terms of networking, again, there's other values to university, not just getting paid more, which you're not even getting paid more, but there are other values in the sense of networking and socializing and trying new things. I'm sure that's great. But if you're thinking more from a financial standpoint, it only makes sense to study something within STEM, and maybe economics as well, because obviously financial guys get paid a lot. So study STEM. Number 2, consider T levels of vocational skills. So T levels in the UK is the equivalent of A levels, but for workplace skills. So things like manufacturing and knitting. I don't know why I said knitting, but things that are actually like handyman things that you can do. Because we need more manufacturers, we need more electricians, we need more plumbers, because these people are necessary and we don't have enough of them. Instead, we have a bunch of airy-fairy history experts who don't really contribute much to society. Advice is tailored to someone who really isn't that good at STEM. So they can't sit down and do maths. It's absolutely fine. You don't have to. But I would recommend in that case learning a skill in the trades. Number 1, you get paid a lot. Number 2, you will be needed forever. There will never be a point in time where your skill is obsolete. We're not going to have AI plumbers. So get into the trades if STEM isn't something you can do. And number 3 is something I recommend to absolutely everyone, whether you're in university, just left university, about to go in, stack skills. We've seen how supply of graduates is increasing and the value is dropped. How can you raise your value? Stack skills. Make yourself very, very hard to replace. Don't just have a master's degree. Don't just have a sort of a biology degree. Be able to learn marketing. Okay, be able to sell things. Be able to network really well. Be able to know a bunch of other subjects as well, and a bunch of other subject matter. Learn about business. Learn about, God, this is critical, man. Learn how to write and speak. If you can write really well, you'll beat every AI writer out there. If you can speak very well, you'll beat every AI sort of voice generator out there. So stack skills to make yourself unfireable. Because they'll be like, okay, well, think about it. If you're a guy who has a bunch of skills, and employer's like, oh, this guy's not that good at maths, but he's really good at marketing, so we can stick with the marketing department. But he can sell really well. He has this experience in selling. He's done a bunch of things at college, selling stuff. Okay, let's put him in the sales. Oh, he's really good at talking. Okay, let's get him in the board meetings. Let's get him pitching to our potential clients. Stack skills. So that's the end of the video. And hopefully that clears up some of you guys who are considering university what you should do. Okay, if you found it interesting, share it to someone who's about to join university, who's about to do a philosophy degree. In fact, please send it to someone who's about to do a philosophy degree. Send this video because they need to hear this. Okay? All right. See you next time.